Hello and welcome to this year's monitoring process for the Title II Part A program. This presentation will discuss the selected Title II Part A requirement. We will go over the documents that the LEA will need in order to participate in this process, as well as the items that TES staff will review. Before we begin, we would like to point out documenting overall compliance for a program requirement may require several forms of documentation to be maintained locally and available upon request by TEA and/or an auditor. To ensure overall compliance with program requirements, LEAs should refer to the program guide and/or other program-related resources that reference the multiple forms of documentation required to be maintained locally. The documentation requested for submission during the monitoring process may not include all forms of documentation that are required to be maintained locally. Here we have the chosen program requirement for the upcoming monitoring process. The Title II Part A statute requires that Title II Part A activities carried out by the LEA be aligned with the challenging state academic standards. For this requirement, the LEA is required to submit documentation for item 1.1 that will be a description of how the activities will be aligned with the challenging state academic standards. To document compliance for this particular requirement, the LEA is asked to submit for one Title II Part A activity relevant pages of the most current district improvement plan that includes a statement that describes how the LEA will ensure that the activities to be carried out on the Title II Part A will be aligned with the challenging state academic standards. Issues that may result in an improvement needed status for item 1.1 include the following. Auditable documentation requested was not submitted. Documentation submitted does not show the activity to be aligned with the state academic standards. Documentation is for a state required activity and is, therefore, a supplant. The documentation required for item 1.2 is relevant activity documentation for one Title II Part A funded activity referenced in item 1.1. Acceptable documentation include activity documents for one Title II Part A activity such as payroll costs, contracted services, supplies and materials, or other operating costs that demonstrate such activity alignment with the state academic standards. Related activity documents must be appropriate for the selected activity in item 1.1. This chart shows examples of some possible Title II Part A activities by class object code and their corresponding activity-related documents. For example, if the activity falls under object code 6100 for payroll costs, such as extra duty pay for Title II Part A professional development outside of the regular school day, we expect to see a related training certificate or extra duty pay request form or other documents related to the Title II Part A professional development that staff received. Issues that may result in an improvement in the status include auditable documentation requested was not submitted. Documentation submitted does not align to the activity described in item 1.1 documentation. Documentation is for a state required activity and is, therefore, a supplant. Thank you so much for your time and attention. If you have any questions, please reach out to the contact information listed.